When I was younger, my father would beat me with a leather belt because of something I did that was wrong, and then scream at me to shut up when I was crying. No, the punishment usually came after what I, in retrospect, see as honest, childish mistakes at worst, and just lack of knowledge as a new human being on the earth at best. What these beatings taught me was that it was not okay to ever do anything quote unquote wrong. And it certainly wasn't okay to express my emotions, my sadness, and my anger for the way that someone was treating me abusively. What does this have to do with perfectionism? And how can you, as someone who struggles with perfectionism, find a way to work through that, hopefully to create more peace for yourself? If you're new here, my name is Cherise La-Vonne. I am a public speaking, communication, and confidence coach for people who identify as the black sheep of their family, who want to break cycles of abuse, and who are ready to be the change that they want to see in the world. I help you to go from insecure to influential by working on your inner confidence, your practical public speaking skills, and then also anchoring everything you do in a deep sense of purpose. So let's talk a little bit about perfectionism. This topic came up for me to talk today because I just got out of a session with a client who we were about to review an essay or a speech that she had written using my 5 minute quick writing speech formula. In the process of starting to express this speech, it was very hard for her because she felt like it was too much of a rough draft. Now, I tried my best to encourage her to understand that it has to be a rough draft before it gets to be perfect. And in fact, she created this metaphor of writing a speech sort of like being in the process of putting on makeup. Sometimes it looks a little crazy when you only have the color corrector and the base coat on, but once you start contouring, adding color and definition, the whole look comes together. And in fact, that is the process of writing a speech. But instead of going into just forcing her to express this speech, we started to go into understanding a little bit more where her resistance was coming from. Because you see, in my program, Speak for the Soul, Speak from the Soul, I don't just care about how you show up on stage. Actually, I really do care about how you show up on stage in public spaces in your private relationships. And I understand that for you to show up with the most confidence, it cannot just be a superficial job. It has to go deep. And so if there's something that's blocking your ability to show up confidently and with clarity because of some thought processes, belief systems, traumas, or pains that you're carrying, then we have to address that. And so we spent our session addressing that. Perfectionism comes up, and at least in her case, and also in my case, perfectionism really comes up because of the ways that we were taught that our survival or reception of love or reception of provision and affection was based on how good we could be. And the first step in curing or getting relief from your perfectionism is going to be to acknowledge that. Acknowledge that your perfectionism is a perfect response to a certain set of circumstances. Okay? Acknowledge it. It would make sense that if your father threatened to throw you out of the house if you ever came home pregnant, that every time you have sex or even think about sex, you get anxious because your housing and your sense of self is connected to that. I'm speaking from direct experience here. It would make sense if anytime you spoke up about something that you found was unfair in the way that your parents treated you, or anyone else in your experience, friends, a lover, and they responded with aggression or apathy or abandonment, that you would then learn that, okay, I have to be on my P's and Q's if I really ever want to experience affection from this person. It makes sense. And I want you to acknowledge that with compassion. Why? Why does that matter? You know, there are studies that show that the way that we show up in the world changes based on how we believe we are being perceived. And so if you think you're being perceived as someone who is going to be judged or pushed out or seen as unworthy, then that might very well influence the way you show up. If you can allow yourself to stop thinking about all the ways that you will be disowned because of showing up imperfectly, aka authentically, and start to consider that there could be a possibility of you to be seen through the eyes of compassion, celebration, and love, then you may feel safer to show up in your authenticity. So when you take the responsibility as your now adult self to say to that part of yourself that may still be stuck in your childhood, I see you, I feel your pain, and you know what? I'm not going to judge you for it. It makes sense. It makes sense that you develop this thing of perfectionism. I'm not going to say it's wrong. I'm not going to tell you that you should change it. I'm just going to acknowledge that, yeah, of course, that would be your response because that was a survival response and you are a fucking survivor. Give yourself credit too for that. And once you are able to acknowledge that, you can then acknowledge the ways that perfectionism is helping you and the ways it may not be helping you. And I want us to really look at this very quite objectively. How does perfectionism support you in your life today? Does it mean that you feel like you always are guaranteed to have friendship, which matters for your sense of self and social well-being? Okay. Is it preventing you from finishing a speech that you're very excited to prepare and share with the world, but you're just kind of stuck? And so you find yourself unable to complete the task, and then you end up feeling even more like a failure? Okay. In what ways is it supporting you? In what ways is it not? And in the ways that it's not supporting you, are you willing to make any adjustments? And so that's the second step. The second step is analyze the ways that it's supporting you and not supporting you, perfectionism, and determine, okay, do I want to make a change here or not? And the reason why I put this step here is I think societally, especially as we start becoming more aware of mental health issues and self-development, personal development, we often like to pathologize ourselves. We often like to really focus on what's fucking wrong. And it's almost like if we see something that other people have determined as wrong, for example, perfectionism, we immediately go into the I am bad, I need to change this is not good mode. I don't really find that helpful on a personal level, at least, because what that does for me is that brings up shame and that brings up guilt. And personally, shame and guilt shut me down more than they motivate me. So I found it helpful to look at these things that people may say you need to fix and say, well, how is it helping me? And how is it not? And to determine for myself whether I want to make adjustments or not and be okay with my decision. So, in the case that you do want to make adjustments to your perfectionism, ask yourself how it's not helping you. So, that's our second step. Analyze the ways that it's supporting you and it's not supporting you. And then our third step is going to be cultivating a new perspective. The first step we took was to acknowledge why we have perfectionism in our life and why we tend to always be trying to make things work. It makes sense. If you've determined in the second step, you know what, this might be something that I might want to shift a little bit because I would like it to not get in the way of certain advances in my experience. In this third step, you're going to cultivate what a new experience could be, what a new idea could be. One of my favorite ways to do this is through the use of journaling, free writing, and affirmations. So I start with just giving myself the opportunity to say, you know what, for 10 minutes straight or for 3 pages straight, I'm just going to write out without lifting my pen off the paper and without too many pauses what I'm feeling about this, why I'm feeling it, why do I have perfectionism, what would I prefer, why would I prefer that, how would it help me? So, for example, that may look like this to me. It makes sense that I have perfectionism because of the way my father treated me and, quite frankly, punished me for not being perfect in his eyes. But right now, it's getting in the way of my own sense of accomplishment because there are things that I know I can complete, but I get frozen along the way. So I need to figure out how can I adjust the way I'm thinking about these things so that I don't feel so frozen. And I would keep writing. And I found a couple of new perspectives that have helped me, which I'll share with you, but you may find perspectives of your own. Once you've done that free writing, we go into the affirmation phase. And I call this by different names. It's either affirmation, it's either writing spells, it's either writing treatments, it's either writing a prayer, whatever it is setting in word what your new perspective will be. Understanding that this pill, and I really prefer pill more than anything else, is a medicine that you can take in the moments when your mind defaults to the perfectionist ways. So once you've given yourself compassion, you've analyzed that you want to make a change, and you've taken the time to journal out why you want to make this change and what are some ideas that you can do to make this change, you're going to write a pill, a word pill for yourself. Because speaking and being confident is not just about what you do outside there to someone else, it's also about how you speak to yourself. It starts with how you speak to yourself, in fact. So, in my case, some of the affirmations that I come up with, which some of them are quite cliche and others are a little bit more specific to my circumstance, and you may adopt these if you like. One is the only way out is through. The only way I can get to the end of what I want is to be in this present moment going towards it. And that may seem a little bit obvious, but our mind needs that obviousness sometimes. I don't know if obviousness is a word, but our mind needs that sometimes. I like to think of it this way. When I am on the way to Jamaica, let's say I'm visiting Jamaica, which is my home country, and I'm in the plane. I can think of two ways to consider my position in that journey. I can think of how long it will take before I get to Jamaica, or I can think about how cool it is that I'm on the way to Jamaica. And the second one tends to involve way less anxiety and restlessness. When I'm focusing on how far I have to go, aka perfectionism, in the examples of writing a speech or any other way that you are perfectionist in your life, when I'm focused on how far I have to go, it makes me a little bit uncomfortable. But if I focus on the excitement of being in the process of going, then I feel better. So the only way out is through helps me. What also helps me is this idea that it's another cliche, done is better than perfect. And the third one I'm going to share, which is a little bit more personal to me, but sort of building off of the done is better than perfect, is even 1% of my value means something to the world, means more to the world than zero. And so when I think, for example, of these YouTube videos, I'm recording them on Zoom. I'm aware that the video quality is not the best. The sound quality sometimes is bad because I have never-ending construction happening across the road for the past year that I've lived in this current apartment. Can you tell I'm annoyed by that? But still, if I chose to be perfectionist and wait until I had all the equipment and the soundproofing and the perfect light and etc., you who are still listening to this video, however minutes in, would have not even gotten this smidgen of value that I have to share. And so if I truly care about the world, about the change I am making, about the cycle I am breaking, I may prefer to show up in imperfection rather than waiting for perfection. And let's be honest, take this with a grain of salt because sometimes, yes, it matters to be prepared. Okay. And it matters to prepare as best as you can for something. So I'm not saying don't care about preparing, but I am saying see if you can find a way to value even an imperfect version of what it is you are creating, sharing, or saying. And that brings something to mind right now. If we're thinking about, okay, perfectionism in the realm of, let's say, interpersonal conversation, someone you have a loving relationship with or want to have a loving relationship with, and there's something you want to talk about, but because you're unsure that you'll be able to talk about it well, you shut down, which may be a very reasonable thing to do because you don't feel like you have the skills, because in the past they got angry. Very real, okay? Acknowledge that first and foremost. Give yourself that compassion to acknowledge that. If you still choose to make a change and you still choose to show up imperfectly, one of the things you can do is you can express that vulnerably to someone. You can announce that, hey, I want to talk to you about something. I have to be honest. I'm a little afraid I might not say it right. I'm asking you to be patient with me. Now, that person may say yes or no, but you still have shown up in a way that requested that space. And I see this also in speeches. Growing up, one of my siblings had a hearing impediment, and so therefore a speech impediment. And they were valedictorian of their class one year, and I was supporting them with their speech. And they felt obviously anxious about the speech impediment compared to their speech, right? Of course, you're going to feel anxious about that. And so, what I encouraged them to do was, well, just say it up front. Be open about your imperfection. Let it be known and still show up with the best that you have. That's all I have to share today. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. I would love to create videos that are more supportive of whatever you're looking for in the realm of communication, confidence, personal development, etc., etc. And if you like today's video, please subscribe, share with a friend. It really helps me, helps this channel, helps me feel motivated to create more. Until next time, I'm Sharice La-Vonne. If you want to connect with me directly, check out the links in the description. And I also have some free resources for you there. I really hope that as this person who is showing up in the world in a way of faith and beauty and strength and power, that you allow yourself to feel just how magical you are. And even in your imperfection, know that you're worthy of the best. Until next time, hasta luego.